Rebuilding the human body is one of the greatest aspirations of engineering technology. The challenge is to engineer artificial limbs that replicate the actions and functions of the human body, whilst being reliable, aesthetically pleasing, and easy to use. But engineers have different ideas about what makes an artificial limb better, and every user has different needs. Creating an artificial leg is relatively easy because it has one main purpose: to bear weight. A hand has many purposes. It's a gesture machine. It's got touch and sensation. It has temperature and texture, and it manipulates its environment. To do this, the human hand has 3 main nerves, 2 major arteries, and 27 different bones. The fingers and thumb have 19 joints between them. Even quite simple motions involve coordinating up to 60 different muscles. For designers of artificial replacements or prostheses, one of the biggest problems is to replicate the way the human hand is controlled. Artificial limbs have been in use since 300 BC, but 2,000 years have produced nothing that can fully replace the function of a human hand.
There are 3 basic forms of artificial hand. There is the purely passive device, and its function is to look good. Then there are the mechanical devices, quite often hooks, which are set in such a shape that you can have either a precision or power with the same device. And they're very practical, they're very light, they're very robust. And the final thing is an electric device, usually but not exclusively in the shape of a hand.
Like most amputees, Jay uses what is known as a myoelectric arm. It works by sensing the tiny electrical currents generated in muscle movements in the part of Jay's arm he still has left.
The hand doesn't allow me to have individual finger movement. It's just an opening, closing, and a grasping, motion that, where I can stop it and I can hold things. But it doesn't have an individual finger movement that your hand has. If I take it off, I can kind of show you inside of it a little bit. There's a couple of electrodes inside, and I make muscle movements with my hand, with my residual limb, and that activates a couple of sensors inside of the arm, and it makes it open and close like that.
In Scotland, the champion for better limbs is Campbell Aird. Like Jay, Campbell's artificial limb is myoelectric, but with none of his original arm left to trigger a movement, he has to operate it in a slightly different way.
Housed up here in the shoulder, there's a switch at the back. It's called a myo switch, and there's one at the front. So if I make the slightest muscle movement in the cap here, back the way, the hand will open. Forward, the hand will close. And the harder you do it, the more it continues the pressure. So it can hurt ladies when you shake hands and things like that. It is a pulley system from the back that if I flex those muscles, the arm comes up. And once it's here, I just lock it. It's detachable in such a way that if I unscrew it, you can see the gear mechanisms inside here.
Campbell has volunteered his time and his body to help develop a shoulder movement for amputees. For 8 years, he's been a guinea pig with the Edinburgh Modular Arm System. The arm is the first to use a powered shoulder, and it's modular, so the components are interchangeable. There are no electrodes sensing nerve impulses. Campbell uses specific muscle movements in his residual limb to activate force-sensitive switches that move the arm. Campbell got the first prototype of the arm to try out at home in 1998. He tested it for a year and a half. Despite the fact that the EMS arm permits a degree of control and movement no other limb allows, some arm functions are still impossible.
When you try to have a drink, not that I drink out of bottles very often, is this pivotal movement here brings something to your mouth. This doesn't have that pivot movement. So the result is how about that?
Campbell's experience with the first EMAS prototype enabled David and his team to see where they could make improvements. 3 years on, they have just built a second prototype, which Campbell is about to try out for the first time. The switches that control the movement of the arm are very sensitive, so David has to ensure that they're all in the right place and that Campbell has full control. A switch slightly out of place can be triggered by something as simple as Campbell taking a deep breath. The continual improvement of the Edinburgh arm means that Campbell will soon have the permanent use of a prosthesis that gives him movement above the shoulder, his biggest wish. Jay too has been the subject of a new experiment in artificial limb technology. At Rutgers University, New Jersey, Professor Bill Kralius and his team of engineers have been taking a different approach to amputees, using the so-called phantom limb phenomenon. That is, the feelings and sensations that a limb, despite being amputated, feels as if it is still there. They believe it could make all the difference to amputees like Jay. Bill's aim is to translate this phantom limb phenomenon into a natural movement in an artificial hand. It requires a new kind of sensory system, which is called myopneumatic. The so-called Dextra hand was designed and built by Mike Kogan.
The one main difference that our hand has that no other hand on the market has is the ability to tap on a keyboard. We're trying to break the field by allowing something more than just this 1 degree of freedom of grasping and to allow individual finger control.
After 4 years of development, the time has finally arrived for the arm to be fully tested on Jay. Inside the box are 8 pressure sensors, which translate Jay's muscle movement into 8 electrical signals, which can be read by the computer.
Okay, the next step is to train the computer to read Jay's signals correctly and interpret them so that he's able to move the 3 fingers with dexterity.
Jay is not trying to move the mechanical hand. He's moving his phantom thumb to train the computer. Jay has limited muscle movement in his residual limb, which only allows Bill to pick up 3-digit movements. Testing and training the hand has taken an hour. It's time to try the hand out for real.
It's Mozart time. Let's go.
For Jay, it's been a very long time since he was last able to play a musical instrument. But the Dextra hand is still a prototype. Jay can't yet leave the old artificial limb behind. Testing has been going well for Campbell too, but for both men it's still too early to talk of a breakthrough. Advances in artificial limbs, whether by tried and tested principles or by innovative technology, pose a fundamental question for both their engineers and their users. What does it mean to make a better limb?